Our house was located a little further than Jundi, in a settlement that was known for being a haven for robbers. I was born into the house of a robber, as fate would have it. This area is still infamous for highway robberies. The main road, which was some distance from this desolate settlement, was not safe for travel at night due to the presence of robbers. That's why cars, vans, trucks, and buses traveling from Rajanpur and southern Punjab to Sindh would pass through this area in convoys. The lone buses or vans would be certain targets for robbery, while those traveling in convoys would have police escorts with heavy manpower for safety. Despite this, robberies still occurred frequently. One of the methods used by robbers was to chop down large trees in the middle of the road and block the path. When a bus was forced to stop, the robbers would board it, threatening passengers with guns and rob them of their belongings. Out of fear, the poor passengers would hand over everything, from their kashish and mobile phones to their watches and even jewelry. Often the robbers would be dressed in police uniforms. Beyond Jundi, the area turned into a jungle and desolate land. When a robbery took place there and gunshots rang out, the entire area would shake with fear. We could hear the sounds of it all the way in our settlement. Not all of the people in the settlement were robbers, and not everyone was involved in the robberies, but they all belonged to the bandit community in some way. When the robbers returned after a robbery, they would seek refuge in our village, and every household would feel compelled to offer them shelter. The biggest and most powerful robber in our area was a man named Lal Din, who had complete control over the region. No one dared speak back to him. He was like a king in this area. After a robbery, he would always reward every needy person in the settlement. My father was also under his influence, having been made to become an ally of Lal Din through favors and debts. Although my father did not approve of robberies or criminal activities, he lived under pressure from Lal Din. Whenever Lal Din needed someone to join him on a robbery, he would inform my father and tell him to be ready for the mission. My father, a great shot, would always keep his gun prepared. Whenever he went on these robberies, he would wear a belt of cartridges over his shoulder. When they returned from their raids, Lal Din would share a fair portion of the loot with my father. My mother, though married to a robber, was a pious and good-hearted woman. She never approved of robbery. She would often argue with my father, telling him that it was better to earn an honest living and raise the children with halal, permissible, income, so they would never follow in his criminal footsteps. I had heard stories of Cleopatra's beauty, but when I became more aware of myself and looked into the mirror, I thought to myself, she must have looked as beautiful as I do. When there was a disagreement between my father and Lal Din about the division of stolen goods, in a fit of rage, my father informed the police about the hidden loot. Lal Din did not keep his stolen goods in our village, but rather in a hideout deep in the jungle, which only my father knew about. When the police raided the hideout, Lal Din was not there, but his two accomplices were arrested and the stolen goods were recovered. For a long time, Lal Din disappeared, but one day he came for my father. He knew that my father had informed the police about his secret hideout, and now he wanted revenge. One night, Lal Din sneaked into our house, climbing over the walls as my father was away in another village. My mother and I were the only ones at home. Lal Din didn't harm my mother because he knew she was innocent. She used to stop her husband from engaging in robbery, but she never informed the police, as she was concerned about the safety and honor of her young daughter. One day, my sister-in-law asked me where Narain was. She asked me, and I told her I didn't know where he was. He had gone to attend his uncle's funeral. Just then, his gaze fell on me as I was sleeping unaware. His harsh voice woke me up, and I looked at him sleepily, trying to open my eyes. He had a brutal thought in his mind. He said, "Narain loves his daughter Zartasha so much. Why not kill Zartasha today? So when he returns, his heart will be filled with sorrow. He will cry for her his whole life." He advanced with the intention to harm me, but I opened my eyes, still groggy from sleep. Instead of being frightened, I said, "Uncle, what are you doing? I know you can't kill me." His raised hand froze in the air, and he looked at me carefully. The words escaped his mouth. "Yes, I can't kill you. You're so innocent. I'll take revenge on your father in another way. He is very cruel, but for your sake, I'll forgive him." Lal Din had been a ruthless man, but for my sake, he softened. He even abandoned his intention to kill my father and extended the hand of friendship again. No one knew he did this because he had fallen for my beauty. The God of love doesn't see the difference between angels and mortals, which is why love is called blind. I was 16 at the time, and he was 30 years older than me. But when I was 3, he had visited our house and played with me. I would laugh and fondly tug at his ears as if I were playing with a pet rabbit. The villagers would tremble at the sound of his name, fearing that Lal Din would come out of the jungle and attack the village. The whole world was afraid of him, but I was never scared. I would pull his hair, toss his turban, and he would just laugh. This was a story from my childhood, but years later it seemed unbelievable that someone as brutal as Lal Din had fallen for a delicate young girl like me, the daughter of his enemy, who had informed the police about him. My love had such power that now even Lal Din could not harm my father. During these days, my father fell in love with a widow, and her brother made a condition. If my father gave his daughters Artash's hand in marriage to him, he would marry his sister to my father. This was my father's late love, and late love is always dangerous. My father began preparing for my marriage. But when Lal Din found out, he became furious and told my father, "I spared your life because of your daughter. You should marry her to me, or else in our enmity, everything is fair game." My father not only refused, but also rebuked him. Meanwhile, my wedding preparations were in full swing, and Lal Din could not sleep. The wedding was just a week away when one night, while I was sleeping in our courtyard and my father had gone to buy rice in the city, Lal Din and 3 of his men came and climbed over the wall of our house. It was summer, and both my mother and I were in a deep sleep. I felt as though someone was carrying my cot on their shoulders. When the cot was placed on the ground, I realized I had been taken to Lal Din's hideout. He reassured me, saying, "But stay quiet. We won't harm you." The next day he married me. He treated me so kindly that I ended up falling in love with him. A year later, when I became the mother of his child, I completely forgot the world around me, lost in the love for my child. People who once trembled at the name of Lal Din the robber now saw me as his wife, and I was immensely happy. My love transformed Lal Din the robber into a human being. I was so content with my new life that I forgot all about my family. When my father found out that Lal Din took me away and kept me in his house, and his blood was boiling with rage. My father was also a man consumed by revenge. Another sorrow for him was that he could not win over his beloved, for whom he was trading me. Day and night, my father dreamed of how to eliminate Lal Din and bring me back home so he could marry the woman he desired. He sent me messages through a beggar multiple times, urging me to leave Lal Din and return home, or else he would eliminate both of us. But I knew he couldn't harm us. I had no desire to go back to my father and become the wife of my beloved's brother. For me, Lal Din was right. My home was established now, and I didn't want to destroy it. My father made one last cowardly move by trying to befriend my husband, then deceitfully attacked him. He committed this murder right before my eyes while I was nursing my child, who was sucking his thumb. I begged for mercy, but he showed none and shattered my life. When my brothers-in-law came, I told them that their brother's murderer was my father, who had suffocated him with a pillow after getting him drunk. They loved their brother dearly and wanted to see Lal Din murderer hanged, while my father, due to his connections with influential people, was misleading justice. I trusted my brothers-in-law, and they devised a strange plan to capture my father by offering bribes to some officers with my beauty and youth. I'd already left my father's house, so I was now at their mercy. The day came when I had to appear in court as the sole eyewitness to this incident. My testimony could either save my father or lead him to the gallows. However, my brothers-in-law had also implicated 3 other innocent enemies of my father. Until then, I had been giving statements according to my brothers-in-law's wishes. But when I reached the court, I gave a statement that not only acquitted my father, but also the other wrongly accused individuals. I wanted to save those innocents too. I thought I had done a great favor by saving my father's life, but as soon as he was released, he began pressuring me to hand over my son to my brothers-in-law and become the wife of his elderly mistress's brother. He wanted to make me a scapegoat at any cost. When I refused to comply, my father separated me from my innocent child and gave him to someone else. I was becoming insane with grief over my child, But I made it clear to my father that I would never remarry because I still loved Lal Din as much as I did when he was alive. While this conflict was ongoing, I received a message from my brothers-in-law saying that for the sake of my innocent nephew, they had forgiven me and I should return home because my son was with them. He was a symbol of our deceased brother, and it was impossible for him to survive without me, and he had become very ill. As soon as I received the message, I became restless and one day managed to escape from my father's house to my brothers-in-law. My son was indeed sick and was with them. My father had given him to them on the condition that they would leave me alone, while my brothers-in-law promised forgiveness. They had not truly forgiven me. They said I had disobeyed them and saved my father's life by testifying in his favor, even though he was the murderer of our brother. Now they demanded that either my father's head be severed, or I must pay the blood price for my brother's death. The blood price was that they would marry me off to whomever they chose, and I could not refuse. Seeing no other option, I agreed to their demands. For the sake of my child, I married Laldin's elder brother because it was his wish. Although I didn't want to marry, I felt I had no strength to confront the bandits. I didn't want to place my son in the hands of those notorious criminals, but I had no other choice. I had no refuge or support, so I accepted these circumstances as my home. As long as my husband was alive, I remained his wife. After his death, I became free. By then, my son had grown up and could protect me. Alongside him, my husband's 3 sons from his late first wife had also matured. I raised them as a mother. Although they were born into a family of thieves, they did not embrace that lifestyle. Instead, they engaged in farming. They loved and respected me like their own mother. In their presence, no one dared to point a finger at me. Today I am happy and content. Allah has rewarded me with sweet fruits for my sacrifices and patience. It has been 7 years since my father's death, and now my sons work hard to support themselves, earning a lawful living. I'm immensely grateful to Allah that my sons have a deep aversion to theft and wrongdoing.